Hello, beautiful souls. Thank you for having me. Sometimes we walk into a room and people just turn. They notice. Not because of our clothes, not because of fame, but because of something unseen, because of our aura. Yes, that invisible energy that walks ahead of you, that lingers after you leave. Your aura, when it's powerful, doesn't scream, it shakes. And today, I want to talk about that. 13 signs your aura is powerful, and how it silently shakes the world. You've probably noticed it before. Someone walks into a room, and the entire atmosphere changes. No one says anything, yet all eyes gravitate toward them. That's not coincidence. That's not luck. That's the power of presence. A truly powerful aura doesn't beg for attention. It simply receives it. It walks into spaces like it belongs there, even before words are spoken. And when your aura is aligned with your inner confidence and purpose, you don't need to over-explain yourself or seek validation. People feel you. They sense the energy. You become a presence, strong, calm, and unforgettable. In a world obsessed with being seen and heard, the most magnetic people are often the ones who don't chase the spotlight. They let their aura speak. There's something profoundly attractive about someone who knows who they are without having to prove it. They radiate a silent certainty, a feeling that says, I know my worth, even if you don't see it yet. And that confidence is louder than any speech, louder than any introduction. When your aura is powerful, you don't have to enter rooms. You arrive. That silent command over your environment is what sets you apart. People are drawn to this energy not because it's flashy, but because it's authentic. It doesn't try to impress. It simply is. And that's what makes it unforgettable. We live in a noisy world where everyone is trying to be louder, bolder, more visible. But the ones who truly shake the world do it quietly. They lead with energy, not ego. Their silence is filled with substance. Their presence lingers in people's minds long after they've left the room. That is the definition of true power. Not what you say, but what you radiate. It's important to realize that developing such a presence isn't about being born with some magical charisma. It's about self-work. It's about healing, letting go of insecurities, and standing fully in your truth. When you begin to honor your voice, your values, your boundaries, your aura shifts, you stop shrinking. You stop pretending. And the more honest you become with yourself, the more powerful your energy becomes to others. You start to embody quiet power, and that becomes impossible to ignore. When your presence speaks for you, you become a mirror for others. Some will admire you, some will be challenged by you, but everyone will feel something. That's because your aura reflects clarity. It reflects peace. It reflects self-awareness. And these are rare currencies in today's world. People can sense when you are grounded in your purpose and unshakable in your identity. That kind of presence isn't just powerful. It's disruptive. It gently pushes others to rise, to reflect, to recognize what's possible. So, yes, your aura, when truly powerful, commands the room without noise. It doesn't beg, it doesn't demand, it receives. That's the magic of energy. You don't need a stage to influence, a microphone to impact, or a crowd to be seen. All you need is alignment, your soul, your truth, your light. Because when you are fully aligned, the world listens, even when you're silent. And that, right there, is the presence that changes everything. There's something irresistible about a person who is unapologetically themselves. In a world that constantly tells you to fit in, to filter yourself, to perform a version of who you think you should be, authenticity becomes a quiet rebellion. And yet, it's the most magnetic force you can possess. When you're real, when you drop the mask and speak from your truth, people feel it. They don't just hear your words, they connect with your essence. You don't need to impress anyone, because your energy already does the work. It becomes a silent invitation to those who are aligned with who you truly are. The beautiful thing about authenticity is that it creates space for others to breathe. When you're honest about your flaws, your journey, your dreams, and even your fears, you become relatable, not untouchable. And that's where real connection lives. You attract people, opportunities, and experiences that resonate with your spirit, not your image. The moment you stop performing for acceptance and start honoring your natural rhythm, the right people start finding you. You no longer have to chase. You simply be. And what's meant for you finds its way without force. Being authentic doesn't mean being perfect. It means being whole. It means embracing your contradictions, your complexities, and your truth, even when it's uncomfortable. And there's nothing more powerful than someone who's willing to show up as they are. The world is saturated with imitation, with curated perfection, with voices trying to be louder than each other. But authenticity, it cuts through the noise. It's the calm in the chaos. It draws people in not because it shouts, but because it feels real. And in a world hungry for something real, that's your superpower. You'll notice something when you start choosing authenticity over approval. Your circle changes. Not everyone will stay. Some people love the version of you that kept them comfortable. But when you begin honoring your truth, your tribe evolves. Suddenly, you're not surrounded by people who tolerate you. You're embraced by people who see you. And that shift, that's alignment. That's when you stop surviving in relationships and start thriving in them. Because you're no longer acting. You're attracting. And there's a massive difference between the two. What's even more amazing is that authenticity gives you peace. Real peace. The kind that doesn't need to be broadcast because it's lived. When you're being real, you don't have to keep track of your masks. You don't have to exhaust yourself trying to fit into molds that were never made for you. You just exist beautifully, boldly, and in full color. And that freedom is radiant. People sense it before you speak. They feel it in your presence. Because nothing shines brighter than someone who is truly at home within themselves. So when you wonder why people are drawn to you, why they open up, why they want to be around you, why they feel safe, it's because your authenticity gives them permission to be themselves too. You are the mirror reminding them they don't have to pretend. And that's a gift. You become a magnet. Not because you're trying to be one, but because you're finally standing in your truth. And that kind of energy, that's not just attractive, it's unforgettable. In a world that glorifies noise, silence is a language only the strong understand. It's easy to speak just to be heard, to fill the space with words so we don't feel invisible. But true power doesn't need to raise its voice. It doesn't seek attention. It holds it. There's a kind of strength in being able to sit in silence, to observe without reacting, to carry yourself with calm confidence while chaos surrounds you. That's when people start to wonder about you. Not because you're loud, but because your presence speaks a language they can't quite explain. When you're silent, you're listening, you're absorbing. You're calculating the rhythm of the room while others are busy proving their worth. Silence gives you clarity. It slows down the noise of the outside world and allows your inner wisdom to rise. The strongest people aren't always the first to speak or the ones dominating the spotlight. They're the ones who know when to speak, how to speak, and more importantly, when to wait. Because silence is never empty. It's filled with intention, with control, with depth. And that makes it incredibly powerful. There's something magnetic about someone who doesn't feel the need to explain themselves constantly. Someone who can handle being misunderstood without becoming defensive. That kind of emotional discipline is rare. And it shakes people. When you don't react, when you hold your ground with grace, you disrupt the patterns people expect. And in that stillness, you make the loudest statement of all. You are unshaken. Your silence says, I know who I am, and I don't need your permission to be it. That's strength, that's power, and that's unforgettable. Silence also gives birth to presence. The ability to just be, fully, deeply, and without pretense. Loudness can sometimes be a mask for insecurity, but silence reveals a different kind of energy. It's the energy of someone who's in control of themselves, not needing to control others. Someone who doesn't have to constantly assert dominance because their self-worth is rooted, not reactive. That kind of presence makes people lean in. It makes them curious. They wonder what you're thinking, how you see the world, and why you don't rush to prove your power. And then there's the peace that comes with it. Silence teaches you to find stillness in moments when everything around you feels loud, rushed, chaotic. It teaches you restraint, patience, and deep self-awareness. In silence, you learn that not every battle deserves your sword. Not every comment deserves a reply, and not every moment requires you to perform. Sometimes the most revolutionary thing you can do is pause a breath and simply withhold. Not because you're weak, but because your silence is louder than noise. Because you've mastered the art of choosing your energy wisely. What's beautiful is that silence becomes your shield. It protects your energy. It creates space between you and the world's madness. And the more comfortable you become in that silence, the more untouchable you are. People can sense that. They respect it. They may not always understand it, but they feel it. And that's the magic. You don't need to compete for space when you already own your space. Because in the end, being the loudest in the room means nothing if your energy isn't grounded. But being silent, composed, and powerful within, that's a strength that echoes far beyond words. There's a certain kind of power that doesn't need to be introduced. It's simply felt. It's the kind of power that walks into a room and shifts the energy, even before a single word is spoken. This is the power of your presence, your aura, your energy. People might forget your name, they might forget your words, but they will never forget how you made them feel. That's the truth. And what they feel is a direct reflection of your energy. When your energy is calm, grounded, and intentional, it sets the emotional temperature for the space you're in. You don't just enter a room, you lead it from within. People are constantly reading each other's energy, whether they realize it or not. They pick up on tension, joy, confidence, insecurity, all without a single word being spoken. And when your energy is aligned, when it's clean, confident, and connected, you become magnetic. Not because you're performing, but because you're authentic. You become the person people turn to when they need peace, clarity, or strength. That's not something you can fake. You can't manufacture that kind of presence. It comes from the deep work you do when no one is watching. It's the energy you carry from the inside out. You see, it's never really about the loudest voice or the flashiest image. It's about the quiet current running beneath it all. Your energy speaks volumes about who you are. And when it's rooted in self-awareness and purpose, people notice. They may not be able to explain it, but they feel safer around you. They feel inspired, challenged, or seen. That's the impact of powerful energy. It's not about domination, it's about vibration. You don't have to impose your presence. It naturally influences the space because it carries the kind of weight that can't be taught, only earned. When your energy is aligned, you stop reacting and start responding. You don't absorb every emotion in the room. You decide how the room feels by how you choose to show up. You become the thermostat, not the thermometer. That's real power. You control your peace, and in doing so, you protect your power. And when that kind of strength becomes your default setting, you become unshakable. The storms may come, the noise may rise, but you remain calm, centered, grounded. That's how leaders are made, not through volume, but through vibration. Even in silence, your energy speaks. And sometimes, that silence says everything. It says you are listening. It says you are aware. It says you are present. People can't always describe it, but they'll remember the stillness you brought into their chaos. They'll remember how your energy held space for theirs. That is influence. That is legacy. That is the kind of power no one can take from you because it wasn't given by others, it was built by you. Brick by brick, choice by choice, intention by intention. So when you ask yourself what kind of impact you're making, don't just look at what you say or what you do. Pay attention to what people feel when they're around you. Do they feel anxious or at ease, inspired or drained, empowered or small? That feeling is your energy at work. It's your invisible signature. And when it's powerful, when it's honest, compassionate, and clear, it becomes your most undeniable form of communication. Because in the end, your energy doesn't just walk with you. It walks ahead of you. And it tells the world exactly who you are. There comes a point in life when you realize that love, kindness, and forgiveness are not the same as self-sacrifice. That's when you begin to understand the real value of boundaries. Setting a boundary isn't about building walls, it's about building respect. It's saying, this is how I deserve to be treated, not with anger, but with deep self-love. And when your self-worth rises, your tolerance for disrespect naturally falls. It's not because you've become harsh. It's because you finally understand that protecting your peace is more important than pleasing people who don't protect your heart. You can be the most forgiving person in the room and still say, no more. Because forgiveness doesn't mean giving someone unlimited access to you. You can release the pain, let go of the bitterness, and still choose to step away. That is not weakness. That's wisdom. It takes emotional power to walk away without burning down the bridge, to choose healing over revenge. But it takes even more strength to remember who you are in the process, to remember that your worth isn't measured by how much you endure, but by how deeply you honor yourself. When you start setting boundaries, the people who benefited from your lack of them will push back. They'll call you cold, selfish, changed, and they'll be right, you have changed. You've evolved, you've stopped living on emotional discounts. You've realized that love without respect isn't love, it's control. And anyone who gets uncomfortable with your boundaries is revealing their comfort with crossing them. That clarity is painful at first, but then it becomes your power. Because now you're no longer begging for love, you're choosing it and choosing yourself in the process. The truth is, boundaries are the highest form of self-respect. They're how you teach others to value you. Not with words, but with your choices. You stop explaining and start deciding. You don't need to over-justify your limits. The moment you know your worth, explanations become unnecessary. And what happens next is magic. The right people rise to meet your standards. They don't take offense at your boundaries. They honor them. Because those who truly see your value will never ask you to shrink just to stay in their lives. It's a quiet power, the kind that doesn't scream or seek validation. It's the power of knowing your soul has been through enough to no longer settle for less than it deserves. You forgive not because they asked, but because you are choosing peace. You move on not because it doesn't matter, but because you matter more. That's what emotional maturity looks like. It's not softness without strength. It's strength with softness. It's the kind of energy that says, I love deeply, but I will not abandon myself in the process. And maybe that's the greatest lesson of all, that boundaries are not just about keeping people out, they're about keeping you intact. Your joy, your time, your energy, your peace. You don't need to feel guilty for protecting those things. You don't need to apologize for choosing yourself. Because the moment you stop forgetting who you are just to keep someone else comfortable, is the moment you step into your full power. That's what it means to glow differently. That's what it means to be rooted in self-worth. There's something extraordinary that happens when you start embracing your light, your talents, your truth, your power. You begin to walk differently, speak differently, move through the world with a glow that isn't tied to approval. But here's the truth many don't talk about. Your light will not be welcomed by everyone. Some people will be drawn to it, inspired by it, transformed by it. But others will feel threatened. Not because you've done something wrong, but because your light shines on parts of themselves they've worked hard to hide. And sometimes, people don't hate you. They hate the way you remind them of what they haven't yet become. You'll notice it in subtle ways. The energy shifts. The compliments feel hollow. The support disappears when you win. Suddenly, your growth becomes too much, your joy becomes too loud, your success becomes too lucky. But you must understand, this is not your burden to carry. You are not responsible for how others receive your light. Your only responsibility is to keep shining. Keep evolving. Keep becoming the version of yourself you were always meant to be. Because the world needs more people who dare to be seen, even if it makes others uncomfortable. Sometimes you'll feel tempted to shrink, to dim yourself to keep relationships intact, to make yourself small so others don't feel insecure. But let this be your reminder. You weren't created to be less for the sake of someone else's comfort. You were created to take up space, to speak your truth, to radiate unapologetically. And anyone who truly loves you will never ask you to be less. They will celebrate your shine, not compete with it. Because light doesn't threaten light. It reflects it. And the ones meant for you will never mistake your glow for arrogance. The path of authenticity is often lonely at first. You'll lose people. You'll confuse others. You'll even doubt yourself. But stay the course. Because every time you choose your light, you make it safer for someone else to choose theirs. You become the proof that it's possible to shine without shame. That it's possible to rise without leaving kindness behind. And that's powerful. That's legacy. You don't need a stage or a spotlight to change the world. You only need to live fully lit from within. That energy alone creates a ripple effect beyond what you can see. There will be moments where your light feels heavy. When the stares, the silence, the subtle judgments feel louder than your confidence. But let them stare. Let them whisper. Let them doubt. Because their discomfort is not your failure. It's their invitation to evolve. You are not meant to make yourself easier to digest. You were meant to be whole, radiant, and true. And if that makes someone uncomfortable, let it. Because your light was never meant to hide in shadows. It was meant to disrupt them. So stand tall in your brightness. Keep choosing yourself in rooms that can't hold you. Keep dreaming louder, loving deeper, and rising higher. The shadows you trigger are only proof that your light is working. You were never meant to dim. You were meant to ignite. Let your existence be a mirror, not a mask. And trust that every time you show up fully as yourself, the world becomes a little more honest, a little more awake, and a lot more alive. So let this be your reminder, your truth, your power. Your light is not a mistake, it's a message. You were not born to blend in, to dim, or to downplay the fire in your soul, just to make others feel safe. You were born to rise, to shine, to challenge every room that asks you to shrink. And yes, it will trigger shadows, it will test your boundaries. It will ask you to stand alone at times. But don't you dare stop glowing, because your authenticity, your silence, your energy, your strength, they are your revolution. Own them, protect them, be proud of them. The world doesn't need more people who follow the noise. It needs more people like you who lead with light.